November 2018. The news hit like a punch. General Motors, a titan of the auto world, was closing the historic Oshawa assembly plant in Ontario. For over a century, Oshawa was more than a factory. It was the heart of a community and a symbol of Canadian manufacturing. The announcement felt like a betrayal to thousands of workers and their families. Nearly 3,000 direct jobs were on the line, but the impact would ripple far wider. Experts warned of a domino effect. Parts suppliers, logistics, local businesses, all faced a grim future. The shutdown was seen as a devastating blow, signaling the end of Canada's era as an automotive powerhouse. Headlines predicted economic ruin and a hollowed-out community. The narrative was set: a global giant abandoning Canada, leaving unemployment and despair. The closure was framed as an inevitable result of globalization and shifting industry trends. It was supposed to be the end of an era. But the people of Oshawa refused to accept this fate quietly. Union leaders, workers, and politicians saw the closure as an affront to Canadian workers and their legacy. Instead of resignation, the shock sparked defiance. The story of the GM shutdown was just beginning. What was meant to be an obituary for Canadian manufacturing became the prologue to a story of transformation. The engine had stopped, but the people were just getting started. The world expected a slow decline. But Oshawa was about to prove everyone wrong. This was not the end, just the start of a remarkable fight back. The next chapter would surprise everyone. GM called the closure a strategic move in a changing market. Consumers were ditching sedans for SUVs and trucks. Oshawa's main products were falling out of favor. The industry was pivoting to electric vehicles and autonomous tech, demanding billions in investment. GM said it needed to cut costs and close underused plants, including Oshawa. The plant's output, models like the Impala and XTS, wasn't aligned with GM's future. Trade tensions and new agreements like USMCA added uncertainty. GM was consolidating production where it made the most financial sense. For workers, it felt like a betrayal after decades of loyalty and sacrifice. Generations had built GM vehicles, made concessions, and delivered quality. Now, their contributions were reduced to numbers on a balance sheet. The corporate logic clashed with the human reality on the factory floor. GM's explanation offered little comfort. The community was left to pick up the pieces. The announcement triggered a wave of economic anxiety across Canada. Economists predicted up to 14,000 jobs lost in Ontario, with ripple effects hitting suppliers and local businesses. Headlines warned of economic catastrophe and the end of an era for Canadian auto manufacturing. Oshawa's identity and pride were at stake. The closure felt like a loss of purpose, with fears of rising unemployment, social problems, and a mass exodus of young people. Many believed Oshawa would become another casualty of industrial decline. The prevailing wisdom: Canada was being left behind in the global auto race. The first chapter of this story was written with an air of tragic finality, but the community wasn't ready to accept that ending. Instead of resignation, Oshawa's workers and community ignited a fire of defiance. Led by Unifor, the union, they organized rallies and protests, making it clear this was about more than jobs. It was about dignity and the future of Canadian manufacturing. Local businesses and residents joined in, creating a powerful sense of solidarity. The fight spread nationwide, with Fronier Save Oshawa GM trending and support pouring in from coast to coast. The union launched a high-profile campaign, including a Super Bowl ad, to pressure GM and rally public support. Local leaders like Mayor Dan Carter refused to let the narrative of decline take hold. Task forces formed to support workers and explore new economic opportunities. The focus shifted from mourning the past to building a new future. This groundswell of resilience changed the conversation. The community became active agents in shaping their destiny. They couldn't force GM to reverse its decision, but they could influence what came next. The unified front of workers, unions, and leaders created immense pressure. It forced both government and GM to stay at the negotiating table. The fight for Oshawa became a national symbol of collective action. The story was no longer about loss, it was about the power of unity. Oshawa was determined to write its own future. The response was strategic and relentless. Unifor-led walkouts, protests, and a boycott of GM vehicles made in Mexico, linking Oshawa's fight to broader labor issues. Behind the scenes, union leaders like Jerry Dias negotiated fiercely with GM executives. Political leaders including Prime Minister Trudeau and Premier Ford presented a united front, condemning GM's decision and pledging support. The government offered retraining programs and worked to find a new purpose for the Oshawa site. This synergy of protest, negotiation, and political pressure kept GM at the table. The initial plan to abandon the site became untenable. The unified front forced GM to consider new investment and a new life for Oshawa. The fight was far from over. Against all odds, the pressure worked. In May 2019, GM announced a $170 million investment to transform part of the plant for parts manufacturing and an autonomous vehicle test track, saving 300 jobs. It wasn't a full victory, but it kept hope alive. When COVID-19 hit, the retooled plant pivoted to produce millions of face masks for healthcare workers, showcasing the workforce's skill and adaptability. Then, in late 2020, GM stunned everyone again. Over $1 billion would be invested to retool Oshawa for pickup truck production. Vehicle assembly returned, and thousands of jobs came back. The plant became one of GM's most efficient and productive. Oshawa's revival was a stunning success. Real people, like longtime employee Rob Osborne, went from forced retirement to leading one of GM's fastest plant launches. Their stories mirrored the community's journey from despair to triumph. Oshawa's comeback became a beacon of hope. The plant was no longer a symbol of loss, but of resilience and renewal. The transformation was complete. The contrast between predictions and reality is staggering. Experts expected decline. Instead, Canada forced a global giant to reinvest. Oshawa's story reshaped Canada's role in North American auto manufacturing. The success triggered new investments from Ford, Stellantis, and others, with billions flowing into EV production. Governments partnered with automakers to secure Canada's place in the green economy. The focus shifted to building a complete EV supply chain and new battery gigafactories. The GM crisis became a catalyst for transformation. Today, Oshawa stands as a symbol of what can be achieved through resilience. Communities are defined not by corporate decisions, but by their response. The engine in Oshawa didn't just restart. It powered a new era for Canadian industry.